Hello, my name is Oliver Barrett, and this is the very first episode of the Upper Neighbor podcast. I am joined here by Russell Haehl, who's a longtime friend and professional musician and educator. He is the artistic director and first trumpet of the Houston Brass Quintet. He is the principal solo cornet of the Magnolia City Brass Band. He is an active freelancer in Houston. He maintains a private studio with many students. I'm going to ask you in a second how many students you teach. Russell went to Kinder High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, where we met. He's earned a Bachelor of Music from the University of Texas and a Master's of Music from the University of Houston, both in trumpet performance. Who did you study with at both of those schools?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. This is great. Let's see. Well, at UT, I studied with Ray Sasaki. And at U of H, I studied with Mark Hughes.
So how many students would you say that you've taught since you graduated from University of Houston?
Since I started? I don't know. Probably, at least 150 or 200 or something. I don't know. Because it's just private lessons. So, but, over the years, I've taught at lots of different schools. So, just in the Houston area, I've taught in probably 20 different schools, all around the city, and different types of schools, private schools, public schools, charter schools,
Yeah.
High school, middle school, elementary school, college, whatever.
The whole purpose of this podcast is to be a tool for music educators and band directors. Because, I've personally, as a band director, I've had the experience of, I'm a specialist in trombone and I know how to teach trombone and by association, other instruments that buzz like trumpet and tuba. But I wanted to give a tool to band directors who, would be able to hear from specialists on their instrument and how they would approach teaching certain things. They're going to be like hyper specialized advice for how to approach, the clarinet, the trumpet, all these sort of different instruments. So let's just imagine for a second that you have a complete beginner on the trumpet and they take their instrument out of the case. What are the first few things you do with them?
Well, the first, actually, I think it's really good to start out with how to take the instrument out of the case properly. Honestly, I see a lot of beginners who it's the funniest thing. They pull the case off the ground onto their lap, and then they open it and they try to balance it and take it out of the case.
Yeah.
And put it together and all this without anything falling over. And it's like, what are you doing? Leave it on the ground.
Yeah.
So little things like that make a big difference just because, first of all, I have a thing about I play golf and my brother and I will go practice and neither of us are good, but we'll video each other our swings. And I'll just say, hey, you look at my swing and just tell me if it looks right. Just if it looks like a good golf swing, and just go with that. Because then at least if I'm out there on the course and at least my swing looks like I know what I'm doing, So it's am I taking my hands back too low or weird or something? It's like, I don't want to look like an idiot, even though I play like one. So it's the same thing with beginners. If they have a solid foundation of just, here's how you take the trumpet out of the case without looking like a complete buffoon, then I think that makes a big difference. So then, you get your mouthpiece out, I think it's really important to just have a good model in front of you. So I'm going to sit in front of them and we're just going to have the metronome on and we'll just blow air through the mouthpiece without buzzing, yeah. And because the buzz, I'm a big fan of buzzing. I think it's great. I do it every day. But if you tell a child to buzz or a beginner to buzz their lips, then the you're basically telling them to tense up immediately. So what I'm going to tell them is just blow air through the mouthpiece. Make your lips look like this. And it doesn't have to be exactly like mine, but just generally, and then whenever, if a buzz does happen, then it's like, cool, and if a buzz doesn't happen, so that's okay too. But I think that's the main thing. And then you can see it before they even get a buzz. If the note that's going to come out is going to be a really, really low note, which is often the case for trumpet, a low note for the trumpet. Or if they're too firm and they're set up for like a pretty high note, but if you just say blow air through your chops, just go make an aperture and blow air, then it's not really about hitting a note. And that's good. That's really, really good, because it's hard to hit a note if you never played the trumpet.
Yeah. So you don't tell them anything about like how to hold their lips or anything before they start blowing. It's just kind of put it up to your lips, and as you see me do it, just try and do that. Yeah,
it's just copy. It's just copy what I'm doing. So, I this is a visualizer. I can get mouthpiece out, but I would just say, grab your mouthpiece. I'm not even going to tell them to hold it like this at first. Just say, grab your mouthpiece. And if they're really attentive, if they're really paying attention, then they'll hold it like this anyway. And then I'm going to go, okay, so do this. And they do it. And it's like, cool, we're off and running. And it doesn't matter if they don't get a buzz the first day. I'm not even going to worry about that. But if they do get a buzz, or if they're getting close to getting a buzz, sorry, and I can tell they're getting close, then I'm like, okay, put it in the trumpet and do that same thing, and then they get a note, because the trumpet helps the vibration to occur. So, but yeah, that's day one.
So you start off immediately with the mouthpiece, and then kind of, I like that, just kind of getting the air connection, because I think a lot of kids when they first start just think, oh, I have to go straight to buzz. They don't understand that your air is actually what's propelling it and making the thing make a noise.
Yeah. So yeah, and also, and I find this all the time with students who aren't beginners, is that they forget to breathe before they play, and they have to play this long phrase, and they'll get the horn on their face, and they're just thinking about the notes, and then they just go, bah. They don't even take in air, and it's like, so if you start at the beginning and you say, just blow air. If you just say, just blow air through the mouthpiece like this, then they take a breath every time.
Yeah.
You don't even have to tell them to take a breath. Okay, first take a breath and then do this, because if you're saying blow air, they're not just going to start because there's no air. Right. They have to take a deeper breath, and you're showing them that it's a long airstream, or like a long note. So then they do it once, and it's nothing, and then it's like, no, watch, and they do it, and it's like, that's so important to success on, like, to playing a note and especially in that first week.
Yeah, I love that, because I've always done, I guess, those two things separately. Like, I've done breathing exercises with them, and then done buzzing with my trombone students. But that seems like kind of a nice combination of both of them at the same time. Just focusing on your air, and then you can sort of speed it up and get that buzz going. So once they get a buzz and you've moved to the trumpet, are you trying to get them to play like a C or a G or an open note, something like that? Or are you just going straight to, or just create a sound?
So, okay, the beauty of doing private lessons is that I can start on whatever note they're going to already start on.
Right.
So I can see if they're set up for, you know, a C5, or, you know, like a C in the third space C, or a low C or whatever. And so I can kind of tailor it to that, because I don't think it really matters what note they start on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, you got to have some kind of success at the beginning, and whatever note they get is great. But I mean, if I had my choice, what note do they have to start on? Or if I have a whole class, full of people, I think, you know, I think too big a deal is made out of this, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it seems like it's this big decision, like, oh, should we all start on concert F, or should we start on a B flat, on a low B flat?
Mm-hmm.
Which one? It's like, just start, you know, it's fine. It's for trumpet, start on an E 1 and 2. What's wrong with that? Start in the middle.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, there's always going to be some argument against it you could make. I could say, well, E is not a good one because it's actually kind of a sharp note, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, it's their first day.
Right.
There's
Right.
going to be 6 months down the line, they're not going to remember anyway. And I don't
Yeah.
think, I mean, yeah, I would have them probably just start on C or G, but on a B flat trumpet. Is the thing is that's annoying about trumpet is that C below the staff is a low note. And that's way, I mean, there's only what, 7 semitones until the lowest note from there. So it's not anywhere near the middle of our range. And I mean that, so to me, like, the higher you can start, the better.
Hmm. Yeah, because
You
I know so
know?
many, like if you're teaching like if you're a band director teaching, a class, maybe you don't have a specific beginner trumpet class, maybe you have all brass if you're lucky. Um, you got to
Mm-hmm.
start on that C or that G, the B flat or F. And
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like I always am conflicted because it's like, oh, should I really push my students to start on the higher of the two notes so that they have like more naturally high set? Or should I start lower, which may be a little easier for most of them, but then they would struggle to play high, like they would have too open of an embouchure or too spread of an embouchure. Their set would be too wide
Oh
because
yeah.
you'd just be spending too much time down there. But yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter as
Well,
long as
there are, well, because there's so much that's going to happen in the next month and a half after that first note, that, I mean, hopefully, I would say after like 6 weeks of band, you're going to have introduced C, D, E, F, G to the trumpets.
Mm.
I would hope. And, that's the thing, is like the books, whatever kind of beginner trumpet book, I have some back there somewhere, Essential Elements or whatever, different books. There are better ones and worse ones I have seen. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have that information for you, but I've seen good ones, and I've seen, like, I don't think Essential Elements is the best one. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like one
But
size fits none in a way.
yeah, and like, I mean, look, it's a lot better than nothing. But
Right.
anyway, but it starts kids out low, and you look at like the Arbin book, and if you look at the Arbin book, the first notes are G and C in the staff. Those are the first notes,
Mm.
and then it expands both ways from there out.
Mm.
It doesn't just go, okay, let's go down. It's like, this is the middle.
Yeah.
And you can go up and down. And of course, Arbin was, maybe he wasn't trying to teach little kids, or maybe it was a different time, or maybe he was, I hear he was quite a narcissist. If you read his writings in the Arbin book, he definitely thought a lot of himself. But so maybe he made it intentionally really hard so that nobody else could do what he did. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you heard it here first. But anyway, so I think those books, like when they start out with hot cross buns on EDC below the staff, I don't know. It's like maybe we should be starting with G, F, E flat or something,
Right. Yeah,
and do it in a different key.
that's the thing I'm so interested in is, these method books that are, just getting the whole band to hot cross buns. What's the middle of the road notes that on the
Mm-hmm.
flute, the piccolo player can play hot cross buns and so can the tuba player, all in unison. And so
Yeah.
these kind of method books go straight to that. But if you were to design something specifically for trumpet, there's like, that would be only trumpet players in the class, like what
Yeah.
would be the kind of first intro? Maybe that wouldn't be the case,
Yeah.
starting on an
I mean,
E.
I have a book that's called 100 Progressive Lessons for Trumpet, and it gets progressively harder throughout. It starts at the beginning, and it's written by Dave Hickman, who is the kind of famous trumpet teacher at Arizona State. And he wrote it, and he's definitely an expert on the trumpet, and he starts you out like right away. You're playing long tones on, I think, C, D, E, F, G, A. So he
Below the
said,
staff.
yeah, starting on C below the staff and then going up to second space A, just a C scale, like the first 6 notes or something. And I don't think that's too much to ask of a 6th grader. If you do it in a class and you do it as a group and you just do it every day or every, however many times a week you have band, and then you tell them to go do it at home and hopefully they do it.
Yeah.
I find a lot of success with that.
Okay, so we've got, we've talked a little bit about like what would be the ideal first note to start. Why not start with E? Why not? I agree. If you had
Besides, then they get to push the buttons. That's all they want to do anyway. They just want to push the 3 buttons.
right, exactly. It's not
So
that
it's like,
exciting.
okay,
It's like
now
the
you get
first
to
thing.
push.
The first thing you're going to do is nothing. You're going to leave all your valves
Yeah.
open.
Yeah, that's no fun. They don't like that. So I'll give them some buttons to push.
Exactly.
Let them push. Do 3rd valve. That's, yeah, hey.
And they're
Now
going to
we're
push those
talking.
buttons as hard as they can.
They're going to push them. They're going to really push them.
They're going to white knuckle those valves. Especially young students.
That's what I want to do. I want to start kids on a 3rd valve E. So, because third valve, so that's going to be in tune with a low C as the major third.
Yeah.
It's much more in tune. You know that, right?
I didn't know that.
You don't know that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. The 3rd valve slide, right, is a little bit longer than the 1st valve slide and the 2nd valve slide put together. Mm-hmm. So when you play 1 and 2, it's sharper than 3rd, but it's almost the same note. But it's like a little bit too far for a 3rd. Like how low is a major 3rd supposed to be? It's like 17 cents or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
You know what I'm talking
Adjust
about.
for inflation,
Yeah. 17 point.
Right.
And then, don't use your ears. Just it's just the numbers.
Right.
No, but if you do 3rd valve, so you'll see trumpet, if you start paying attention, you'll see trumpet players, like professional trumpet players, all the time playing stuff 3rd valve, because instead of having to kick out your 1st valve slide to lower a 3rd, you can just play it 3rd valve, and it's like very close.
Interesting. I might use that with some of my students. So let's go back. So we've got the student. They know how to play. They played their first notes. They know how to make a tone. And maybe you've worked on. Sound like you're doing long tones, some scales, some 5-note scales, things like that. Have you introduced articulation? When do you talk about how to start?
Okay, so articulating. I do think at a certain point in the early on, I think it's important to make the distinction between how different languages pronounce a T or a D or these letters that we use for articulation model. I would say, what really helped me was articulating lower, right behind the teeth, and that's because that's how the French say a T. If you go to France and you listen to somebody say 1, 2, 3 in French, it's not un, deux, trois. It's un, deux, trois. Trois. Right? It's down on the teeth. If you go to Mexico, uno, dos, it's not tres, tres, on the roof of your mouth. It's uno, dos, tres, ta, 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 a little bit higher than the French way. And if you, and so you listen to the trumpet players from France, yeah, Maurice Andre and, people like that, and their articulation is absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
And then you listen to people from Mexico, and their articulation is absolutely nails, like supremely articulate,
Mm.
right? So, everybody, if you've heard a mariachi trumpet player, it's like, super clear articulation. Maybe too hard for certain styles of music, but, that's up for debate. So, come to Texas, and we say our T's on the roof of our mouth. Ta, ta. And the thing about trumpet is that's too far away. So our lips, let's say our lips are right here. They vibrate together right here. And if you're articulating on the roof of your mouth, then there's this like distance between where you release the air and where it actually hits your lips. So the closer you have that articulation where you're releasing the air, if you can do it right behind the teeth, front teeth, top teeth, then that little explosion of air when you release is immediate to the lips. So that's why you get a much more clear articulation. But okay, so to get back to where you start teaching articulation, I would say it's not that hard. I find that students don't have that hard of a time with it usually. If you just make sure that they're, I would go back and forth without the horn. So they have the horn, take the horn away, then put the horn back on. And maybe just the mouthpiece, and maybe not even worrying about getting a buzz, but just going, and I think, sometimes I use the analogy of the sprinkler, that hits the air, and it's like one air stream. But that, I feel like maybe that's too much in the weeds in a band class. Don't you?
Yeah, I think so many kids naturally figure out articulation. Like a lot of them have the problem articulating too harsh at first, like kind of blasting the note out, just kind of like holding their tongue there, building up a ton of pressure and just like releasing it. And it's just kind of this explosion of sound. And you have to really like help them dial it back. But I do think that's very effective, actually, like what you were just saying there of like bring it back to the air and modeling away from the instrument, because I always think that the signal's completely lost when they put it on, they put the instrument up and they just like have no idea what's going on in their mouth. They're unable to like, understand or like visualize somehow in their mind's eye what's going on inside their mouth.
Yeah, so I do a lot of with younger students. I do a lot of like slowly getting into the horn. So instead of just playing, I'll be like, all right, first just do this. No mouthpiece, no nothing. Then I don't even put it on the mouthpiece. Just put it in close to the mouthpiece. Don't change anything. Now do it with the mouthpiece on. You don't have to buzz. It's just there. And like still no sound. And a lot of the time when they do that, they get a sound anyway, and they didn't even mean to.
Right.
Because they're delivering the air really well. So I like that kind of thing. I mean, when I was in elementary school, I mentioned I started really young, and we would, and my teachers weren't trumpet players. My band directors were not trumpet players, but somehow we had a bunch of good trumpet players. We had a lot of good trumpet players. But so what did we do early on? The only memory I have was doing mouthpiece buzzing contests. Who could buzz the longest? And then what do you end up with? You end up with kids that are used to holding notes. The winner, they hold it for 25 seconds. But the losers, the first person out, at least held it for 10. That's huge.
Right.
Like the stability of air. And and embouchure and everything for that in order to do that. And it was like, it didn't matter what note it was, high note, low note, but moving all around, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just hold a buzz. That's, oh my gosh. And my kids love that too. I do that with my students where I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a timer on my phone and I'll put it on the stand and I'll hit start and we'll both buzz as long as we can. And I'm like, no, you only held it for 12 seconds.
Okay, let's get into some more nitty gritty details about things. So we've talked a little bit about articulation. I loved how you shared those steps that you take to get a student to get into articulation or to learn how to articulate. Now let's get into lip slurs, which is pretty unique to brass playing, I think. What do you do when you're first introducing a lip slur to a beginner trumpet player? Or if you were a band director and you had to teach, what lip slurs were, flexibility, going through the harmonic series to a class of trumpet players, what would you, for example, would you teach, like if you were trying to get a student to do their first like harmonic lip slur, I should say.
Yeah, an actual lip slur.
Like going from C to G, for example. What would you tell them to do with their air or their lips or, how would you explain that to them?
Yeah. So if you just, like one thing you could do is say, okay, can you buzz from a G down to a C and just glissando on the mouthpiece? Right. So then you go really slow, but really connected, not trying to be like a stair step, but actually gliss. That makes it easier than to do that on the trumpet and then, but it's going to break, and that's what the lip slur is. So if you go, right, there's that break. And it's like, you could do that again, getting into the trumpet. If you have like a burp or something where that holds the mouthpiece next to it, you could do it and just hold it. Or you can just hold the trumpet right here. One thing that I think is really important with lip slurs, and I remember Mark actually made a big deal about this, is you want to hear the break. I think that gets lost a lot of the time. Like people think they need to hide that bump from one note to the next. It's like, no. We want the bump. The bump is good. So I want to hear the break. So gliss down until it breaks into a C from G to C.
So on the instrument, trying to imitate what you did on the mouthpiece, having it really kind of that glissando between the two notes.
Because and this is it, because the air has to continue. Like a good lip slur, it's a slur. The air is continuing. So a lot of the time people do ta, ah, ah, and they're like, they're micromanaging the air, right?
Yeah,
like that.
I have a lot of students that do that.
That's terrible. You're doing it wrong. That's not the exercise. That's not what it is.
Right.
Now you're changing your air. It's like we're lost. But it doesn't have to be a perfect buzz the whole time. You don't have to have, if it's like kind of airy or if it's like coming in and out, that's okay. As long as the intention is there, that you're doing a gliss and you're coming up and it's smooth. And then you do that on the trumpet. Like if I had a group, band section that I was rehearsing with every day, I would have them. I would definitely have them buzz every day a little bit. Definitely. I did that. I have had that. What am I talking about? I did the 6th grade class at one of my schools last year for like they have like a quarter of the year that they do 8 weeks or something. And they learn the trumpet and or start to learn the trumpet, and they and we would do buzzing every day.
Do you do call and response?
Yeah. Yeah. But if you were not a trumpet player, you could do it on a different instrument, a different wind instrument. I think that would be okay. Or you could sing it. That's great too. Right? It's another thing that's not talked about. at all until you get really good. And then everybody's like, oh, you have to sing stuff all the time.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like nobody talks about that with middle schoolers or whatever, but they should. It's like, everybody, let's all sing
Right.
this song. Sing the whole piece. How many chamber groups rehearse like that?
Mm-hmm.
All of them. Canadian Brass does.
Mm-hmm. Like being able to
Houston
sing,
Brass Quintet does.
like get the instruments out of the way.
Yeah, just sing a piece. I really, really ask my students to sing in lessons sometimes, but I should do it more too. Just because, but it's such a good deterrent when they're like, "Oh, I don't want to,"
Right.
and then you're like, all right." So you shouldn't be. We should just make them sing all the time.
Yes.
Okay, everybody, here's the note. Everybody sing it. Go. Did I just change the subject from your question?
No. I mean, talking about singing through slurs, I think just like getting
Oh,
that, singing, getting the
yeah.
buzzing through the slurs. Would you, if you were doing like a lip slur from C to G, for example, would you tell a kid, oh, increase your air speed or tighten your lips
No.
or anything like that? Just let them figure it out.
No. You have to learn. They have to learn how to change the pitch of the note with their lips in order to do a lip slur. That's what it is. So you could be like, yeah, you know how you can like bend the notes a little bit here and there, like if you change your, it's something that it's just trial and error. I think that it's not something I would expect kids that have only been playing for a couple months to do on the trumpet.
I think in some ways the kids need, at first, they need that articulation to assist them in the upper register. If they're trying to play a high, like a C in the staff, for example, like lip slurring up to it would be very difficult, starting from a low note, But if they were able to articulate it, bom, bom, bing, it might be a little bit easier for them to get that high note out, and then they could, once they hear it and get it out, then they could maybe try and lip slur up to it.
Yeah, and like with sixth graders, especially in that age group, and I would say anything from like sixth down, even seventh down, they just want to play a tune.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to play a song.
Yeah, I always go
and
back.
Of course, I get that. Everybody, but that's why we're doing this. We want to play music. We don't want to just play notes.
Yeah, I know. I always go back and forth between, like I know flexibility is such a healthy thing to do. Like at least students I teach I make them do it every day if they've been playing for 2+ years. But like a student today asked, like, why are we doing this? And I had to explain it's kind of a way of sharpening the axe, so that when you go to cut down the tree, which is the musical piece, you'll be able to do it better. It'll dial in your tone and your ability to move through your instrument in a smooth, like fluid way. But it is kind of it is extracting that technique, because of course you have these sort of moments in pieces where you're slurring to something, maybe on the same harmonics, on the same harmonic series, but it is just carrots and sticks, I guess. It's like one for you, one for me. Like, we're gonna do this, and trust me, it's gonna be it's gonna help you in the long run, and you'll notice a difference in your playing.
Yeah, a lot of kids, like I have a sixth grader beginner right now who he doesn't really practice at home very much, but he's at this point that everybody is at some point or another when you're starting out, where to go from C up to G, the natural tendency is to like really squeeze to get the next partial out. And it's really important to learn that squeezing here or even here isn't doing anything. It's like it's just something we think is going to work, a lot of the time, but it doesn't. And everybody does this at a certain point, even if you're Rashawn Ross and you can play like triple C's. There's a point at which, well, maybe not him, but where people start to squeeze. So like this student of mine, he was doing today, he's trying to get to G. And so he's like on C, and I could tell him to slur up to G, right? It's like all this tension here.
Yeah.
And it's just really important to show, to really work on that and be like, you have to just stay relaxed,
Right.
and just keep the air moving. And that's why, I don't know, for me, like the mouthpiece is really good for that. Because it doesn't, you fail so quickly if you try squeezing out a higher note.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and the other thing I think that a lot of people who haven't played brass instrument like as long as we have, people don't realize that it's not really so much about like the corners. That's like this old school way of thinking, that it's really more about the aperture. Do you feel that too on trombone?
Yeah, like the size of the aperture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what changes the note, kind of.
Yeah. I'm always I always go back and forth between what I know, what I feel like I should tell students, which is avoiding saying, tighten your lips or things like that, or, use more
Mm-hmm.
pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that works, if nothing else is
Yeah,
working,
yeah.
and I'll say, a smaller aperture, faster air. And then for some students it may work and they'll pick up on it quickly, but other students, if I say, tighten your lips, try and tighten your lips, you just have to make them tighter, then something
Yeah.
clicks for them and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
and they will do it. But
yeah.
I know that can be kind of,
But yeah. But that's not, you're not saying tighten up this
right.
or this,
Yeah, your lips need to have
It's
just a little
not,
bit more
I
tension
think,
in them.
yeah, I think tighten up isn't as dangerous as like squeeze
Right.
or something. That would be worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, obviously it's just like different strokes, and some kids, I'm not going to sit there and like, teach everybody like, I am going to at least introduce that concept that like, here's your aperture, and to go higher, you're just like making it smaller and opening it up.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't always translate. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, it is kind of interesting that a lot of, I remember hearing, and I still hear sometimes about like firm corners and this. It's like that. What?
Yeah.
I've never thought about that in my entire life of playing the trumpet. Like, keep my corners firm, do this.
Right. Yeah, I rarely ever see anybody with like quote unquote corner problems. I've never seen anybody's corners like dancing around. I mean, young kids, maybe. I think it just comes from young kids, who smile, maybe, or do the smile,
Yeah.
or maybe have like a crazy frown. But it's really not an issue. Or maybe even students who puff their cheeks a little bit to try and keep them to get that pucker in their cheeks rather than letting it puff out. But yeah, it seems like the corners are maybe if something's going wrong with that, it's a symptom. It's not the cause of it.
How would you, if you have a cupcake or a cake and it's like a bunch of candles on it, just blow out the candles.
Right. Yeah.
I've never seen anybody blow out candles like this. I honestly, like, I don't think I've ever seen that. Maybe little kids.
Yeah. Well, I have a question in that vein. This was one of my questions that I always go back and forth on, because we have, we went through the kind of breathing gym era when it was, you're doing all these crazy exercises, you've got your hand up here, you're blowing a paper against the wall, it's very like, Big Bad Wolf, Three Little Pigs kind of blow the house down approach to playing. It's like as much air as you can breathe in, as much, dump it into the instrument. I have noticed that some of my best students who have good upper registers breathe through their nose when they play. at least in the beginning.
Okay.
At least in the beginning. That, when we're just doing basic stuff, and they're not trying to make a big sound or anything like that. Just, they have a very clean sound, and they're able to play through their range pretty well, but they're not taking, these big, like breathing through the corners of their mouth too much. And I always go back and forth on, whether I should say anything or just let them, because they're doing it well. They're the ones who are excelling in the class. So, because I feel like, by breathing through I think their instinct is to breathe through their nose to keep everything set, and they don't have to reset. And it kind of keeps they keep the form of their embouchure as they're playing. And so I'm kind of okay with that. A lot of them like shed that habit naturally.
Yeah.
Like after a year or so,
I think
when they have to get a bigger sound.
Yeah. It's tricky. I think the one of the interesting things about this example you're using is like you didn't teach them to do that.
Right.
It sounds like it would be different if you taught them to do that, and a lot of the time with brass pedagogy, we have to give I don't know about you, but I feel this need to put asterisks on everything and say, like, just so in a week, if I tell you the opposite of this, don't get all mad at me.
Yeah.
If I tell them to breathe through their nose, it's like, now somebody else is going to tell you at some point, never breathe through your nose to play the trumpet.
Yeah.
I may have told you that earlier today, so that's, I don't know. I mean, that all those contradictory, there's so many things like that.
Yeah.
Counterintuitive things like that.
I think of it kind of like, as you were talking about, just relating to the voice, like if you had a young vocal student, like you wouldn't want them just going and belting, right? That just wouldn't be healthy. It would just kind of shred their voice, their vocal cords. You're just putting too much air through their instrument, and they wouldn't be able to handle it and just blow out their chops, and they get the spread sound, their range suffers. I think it's kind of, I think, particularly in the low brass world, we're so kind of air based and like air focused. Yes. And I think, high brass like horn and trumpet don't really think about it as much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for bringing this up. Okay. I would say between telling kids or noticing that trumpet students are using too much air and saying you're using too much air, you have to use less, versus kids that aren't using enough air, it's like 60-40. Like, it is more common that I find myself telling students, keep your air moving. Keep your air moving. Don't stop the air. As you ascend, a lot of the time people get higher, go up in the register, and then they just stop the air. I used to do it. I do it. There's still a point at which I would do that sometimes. I have to remember, don't do that. Keep your air moving. Right? So that's basically saying use more air. Or another example would be breathe, take a bigger breath, right? Take a bigger breath. Use more air. That's like, let's say 60% of the time, but it's like 40% of the time that I'm telling kids, you're using too much air.
Yeah.
Relax. Use just regular old, like you're playing a G whole note, mezzo forte. You don't need to go,
right.
That's going to make you're going to sound terrible.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel like you just took a huge backswing to hit a 5-foot putt. It's like, God, man, that looks really difficult.
Right.
And it is difficult, isn't it? And they're always like, yeah, it is. I'm like, yeah. So instead, breathe like this. Ready?
Right. It's kind of like, to use your golfing analogy, it's kind of like you have a class where some kids are like Happy Gilmore and they're getting a big wind up before hitting it. And then you have some kids who are...
But a 5-foot putt.
Yeah. But then you have some kids who are, just doing like, a couple inches, hitting it nice and smooth, nice and confidently right into the hole. And it's like...
Wait, that is what happens in Happy. He can't putt. All he knows how to do is smash.
Yeah.
So he keeps putting and the ball goes 20 feet past and he putts again and it goes 20 feet
right
past. That is his thing.
But it's like, I'd prefer that most of the kids start from that place of like control and being able to do it and then back it up from there, right?
Yeah.
And the kids who are just kind of,
And that's why I use so much back and forth in my lessons and in like classes that I do, because you can see so much when you watch somebody do something. You can see so much, especially in person.
Mhm.
Like on a video, it's good. In person, it's crystal clear. I mean, at least for me, that's how it's so helpful. There's a video on YouTube of Ray Sasaki, who I studied with at UT, and he's being interviewed, and they're asking him, "How do you start somebody out on the trumpet?" And it's the best. I got to send this to you. It's the best. It's like a grainy video from 2001 or something, and he goes, "Yeah, I just well, I just you just go, um, you know." And then you have them do it or something. It's like so simple.
Right.
He's just like, you just do this, it's like, and then you try.
Right.
And then, and if you keep it simple and you just go, just breathe, just take a breath,
Mhm.
that's what it is.
I have some rapid fire questions for you to round out our interview.
I was hoping you would say that.
Okay, so if you were to recommend a parent comes to you and says, "What trumpet should I buy my sixth grader who's only been playing for a year or seventh grader who's only been playing for a year?" What would you say?
I love it. I would say, and I do say, I give them two options. As far as I'm concerned, there is no intermediate level trumpet. Don't bother. Just get a beginner trumpet or a professional trumpet. For a beginner trumpet, I would get, you can get for $1,000 on Austin Custom Brass's website. You can get a Manchester brand. They have a professional line, but it's like $1,000.
Mhm.
And I have a student who has one, and it's fabulous. I love that horn. It's great. Blows great. Makes a good sound. It's in good condition. Great. And then if you have the money to buy a Bach, Stradivarius or something, really nice trumpet, $4,000 trumpet, go for it. Now, the only other option I would give them is a used trumpet, but then I would recommend specific horns that I find online.
Okay. So recommendation, beginner starter horn. Don't worry about intermediate horns. Once you're ready, go up to a more pricey but advanced, good Bach, Yamaha, something like that.
And if you need to get a used one, that's fine too. That you can save a lot of money. Just consult someone who knows what they're doing when they're looking online for stuff.
Right. Okay. If you had to recommend 5 trumpet players for beginner trumpet players to listen to get an idea of, tone, maybe style, articulation, range, who would be the 5 that you'd give a beginner class?
Oh man. Okay. Let's say. Okay, here we go. This is going to be lots of different styles of music. Okay. Because I think that's very important. So we have Maurice Andre, Clifford Brown, Maynard Ferguson, Bud Herseth, and Malcolm McNabb.
Okay. Next and possibly last question.
Only three rapid fire.
Well, these aren't so rapid fire.
Okay.
So how long and how frequent do you recommend trumpet students practice in their first or second year? Goes my dog.
Okay. Frequency is more important than length of time. Practice at least once a day for a minimum of 15 minutes and a maximum of 45. But if you want to do that twice a day, do it twice a day.
Okay.
Or 3 times a day with like an hour or 2 break.
Okay.
So practice every day for 15 minutes at least. That's what I tell my young students.
Okay, what do you think are, let's just say, maybe 3 common attributes of the best students that you've taught? If there's any sort of commonality between the best students you've taught.
Okay. One is, I don't know if I can think of three, but one is that they listen to music. They listen to trumpet music. They're curious about it. They're interested in it. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the biggest one. Two is that they spend time on the instrument. They play a lot. It doesn't have to be in a practice room, just grinding away on scales every night, but just they play a lot. Get your horn out and play. Three, I mean, I think there's a level of creativity. I think I would say of my best of a commonality between my best students is the creativity and the willingness to like put a stinger on the end of amazing, of a of an easy song,
Right.
or like, hey, I think it would be cool if I played these like really short on this.
Mm-hmm.
Or what if when we're playing Hot Cross Buns we went da 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 da
Mm-hmm.
da da and change the rhythm. It's like that's a huge sign of a prodigy.
Yeah, yeah. Or like
No.
the desire
But
to like
seriously,
experiment,
mm-hmm.
or
And then that they're hearing things and they're not just totally tied to, because I almost said the kids that just they're really good listeners and they're just like they sit and they're just like really attentive, and then whenever you say go, then they go and then they listen again. But that's actually, out of my best students, that's not a I don't think that's a common
yeah.
thread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think it's interesting also that you didn't list anything that was like, oh, a tall student with a large lung capacity, or someone who's great at sports, things like that. Just other more intangible things that have to do with them just getting time on the horn, being curious, and they'll figure it out.
And interested in music, that you like listening and hearing music.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
All right. Next question. What are some books or method books? It could be, yeah, what are some method books that you would recommend to your students, or books that just have music in them? Maybe it's like the real book or something with simple tunes. Doesn't have to be, Schlossberg or Arbands or something like that. Like if you were to recommend to a student who's curious about doing things outside of school, they're doing essential elements at school, maybe they've learned a solo piece. What books would help them?
Well, to me, books that have a bunch of tunes in them aren't method books.
Right, like etude books.
Yeah. And there's like a million books if you go on Amazon and look up, John Williams songs for trumpet, or, popular melodies for trumpet. You'll find a million things. Disney songs for trumpet. And I think all of those things are great. Those are fine. I think that's fun. Play whatever you want, whatever you think is cool and fun. But as far as method books, I mean, I have to say, I have to be a trumpet player. That the trifecta of Arbin, which is right there, Arbin, Clark, Technical Studies, and Schlossberg are the three.
Right.
That it's like you have to have those three, in my opinion, and they're great. You have to have a good teacher who knows how to give you prescribed things out of them. I mean, the Clark book, you can just play through it. It's going to be amazing. But those are the three method books that every trumpet player has to have.
Right.
And it applies to jazz or classical or anything in between. Yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's, just kind of building your library from a young age.
Yeah. I had an Arbin book when I was in elementary school.
Or even looking at it and seeing, I know I had one, I think, late middle school, maybe early high school, and it's just, I had no idea how to do it. I just knew that I just love taking it out, open it to a random page and just try and do something out of it.
Yeah. Look at all these notes, man.
Yeah, it's just kind of fun to have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's and by the way, all those books, maybe I don't know if Schlossberg is, but Clark and Arbin are online for free. They're public domain. You don't even have to buy them. Just download. Just scroll through it on your iPad or on the laptop or whatever.
Yeah, or print it out and have 100 loose leaf pages.
Yeah, maybe just print out specific pages. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time, nearly 2 hours. We've talked about a lot of different things, wide-ranging trumpet issues, and yeah, I just want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. If you have questions for Russell, send him an email. It's rtrumpethaehl, Haehl, at gmail.com. He takes fan letters as well as questions and lesson inquiries, masterclass inquiries, anything like that. Thanks for being here today, Russell.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.